Have you ever wondered why so many men seem magnetically drawn to women who don't follow the script of docility, submission, or predictability? Why, when faced with a woman who sets boundaries and doesn't apologize for existing with intensity, many men don't just become interested, they become captivated? Maybe the answer doesn't lie in her attitude, but in what that attitude awakens within them. Carl Jung said that everything we find fascinating in another person is actually a mirror of what our soul longs to integrate. And maybe that's exactly what's happening here. When a man meets a woman who refuses to shrink, who doesn't need to be saved, who owns her truth with quiet ferocity, he isn't just meeting her. He's meeting a reflection of the freedom he lost somewhere along the way. The woman he calls bad isn't wicked or cruel. She's whole. She's the embodiment of something he's been taught to suppress: emotional authenticity, self-trust, and the courage to live without permission. For generations, society painted the ideal woman as the one who pleases, who waits patiently, who molds herself into softness so she won't be too much. Yet, in the quiet spaces of male desire, there's an undeniable pull toward the woman who breaks that mold, not because she's dangerous, but because she's free. And freedom, to a man who's been conditioned to dominate or to hide behind control, feels both terrifying and irresistible. When a woman doesn't bow, when she meets a man's authority with grounded calm instead of fear, something ancient stirs in him. It's not just attraction, it's recognition. Somewhere deep within, his soul whispers, "This is what you've been missing." But his ego trembles because she is the mirror he never wanted to face. She doesn't obey his emotional rules. She doesn't bend to his validation. And every time he tries to place her into a box of expectations, she slips through his fingers like light. This isn't a game between genders. It's an ancient dance between power and vulnerability, between desire and fear, between who we pretend to be and who we might become if we stop performing. Jung called this the confrontation with the shadow, that pivotal moment when a man is forced to meet the parts of himself he's spent years denying. And that's why he keeps coming back to her, even when his pride swears he won't. He may try to replace her, erase her, forget her, but what she awakened within him refuses to sleep. Because what he felt wasn't just passion. It was an earthquake of self-awareness. She didn't just make him feel alive. She made him realize how long he had been emotionally asleep. The so-called bad woman isn't the villain of his story. She's the mirror that exposes the illusions he's built to feel powerful. She's the boundary that tells him where his immaturity ends and his manhood begins. She's the compass that points him toward a deeper truth, that love isn't found in control, but in surrender. For many men, that realization feels unbearable. They've been raised to believe strength means dominance, that masculinity is proven through control. But when faced with a woman who doesn't need to be conquered, who isn't afraid to walk away, he faces the truth. His power was never real. It was performance, and in her presence, that performance collapses. That's when something profound begins, not between them, but within him. He begins to see that the tension he feels isn't about her defiance. It's about his fear of losing the illusion of control. Her freedom exposes his emotional imprisonment. Her calm silence disarms his ego. And though he'll call her difficult, cold, or too intense, what he truly means is, she sees me too clearly. A woman like that doesn't raise her voice to demand respect. She embodies it. She doesn't threaten to leave. She walks away when the respect isn't mutual. She doesn't seek validation. She stands in her worth with quiet certainty. And in doing so, she breaks something within a man. But it's not desire that breaks. It's illusion. He suddenly realizes that all the tools he used to maintain control, charm, dominance, withdrawal, mean nothing here. Because this woman doesn't respond to manipulation. She responds only to truth. And the more he tries to play the same old games, the more lost he becomes. For the first time, he's not facing a woman he can conquer. He's facing the mirror of his own limitation. Jung said that love, in its truest form, doesn't fill you. It exposes you. And that's what she does. Without trying, she exposes the emotional child behind the man's mask. She awakens the parts of him that have never matured, the boy who fears rejection, who confuses dominance with love, who craves validation, but calls it strength. That's why he oscillates between craving her and running from her. Because being with her demands transformation. It requires him to renounce the safety of his ego, to dismantle the persona that kept him admired but disconnected. Loving her means losing everything false, and for most men, that's a kind of death, but it's also the only way to be reborn. When she says no, he hears a challenge. When she withdraws without drama, he feels abandoned. Yet what he's truly facing is not her distance, but his own emptiness. The silence inside himself that he's never dared to listen to. She's not punishing him. She's awakening him. And though he might call her the problem, deep down he knows she was the mirror he needed. Because beside her, he doesn't just feel attraction. He feels exposure. And exposure, when you've spent your life hiding behind pride, feels like danger. But that danger is actually the beginning of healing. Because only a whole woman can show a man how incomplete he's been pretending not to be. Everything begins the moment a woman refuses to shrink herself to fit inside a man's comfort zone. That single decision, often silent, almost invisible, shakes something deep within him. Jung believed that the human soul evolves through confrontation with what it most fears. And for many men, that confrontation arrives wearing a woman's face, the face of the one who will not submit. She becomes, without trying, the embodiment of his shadow, the side of him he's never wanted to meet. Every time she holds her ground, every time she chooses dignity over validation, she exposes the fractures in his identity. When she says no with calm firmness, when she walks away without theatrics, when she demands respect without raising her voice, she disrupts the story he's been living in. Something breaks. Not love, not desire, but illusion. The illusion that he has power over her. And that realization that she cannot be controlled is both terrifying and magnetic. Because for the first time, he's not facing a woman who wants to be led. He's facing a reflection of his own limitations. She's not challenging his dominance. She's revealing that he never truly had any. She doesn't scream, yet her silence echoes for miles. She doesn't beg, but her absence speaks louder than any words. She doesn't punish, but her leaving cuts deeper than any revenge. Because when she disappears, she takes with her the mirror through which he once saw himself. And without that reflection, he's left alone, in a room of his own noise, confronted by the truth of what he's been avoiding. Jung said that love isn't what fills you, it's what exposes you. And her love, or the memory of it, exposes him completely. She's not a fantasy to possess, she's a catalyst for growth. But growth is uncomfortable. It demands destruction first, the collapse of his ego, the death of his performance. That's why he runs, why he denies, why he tries to replace her. But no matter how many bodies he touches, no one feels like her. Because she didn't just awaken desire, she awakened consciousness. It's not just romance he's missing. It's revelation. It was never just about her body or her eyes or her voice. It was about what she triggered. In her presence, he glimpsed what real connection feels like. Something raw, unfiltered, without manipulation. And that kind of intimacy terrifies those who've built their identities on control. He tries to move on, but her energy lingers. In quiet moments, her image returns like a symbol, carved into his subconscious. Her gaze, her calm, her refusal to compromise, they haunt him, not as memories, but as mirrors. He starts to realize that what torments him isn't her absence, but the truth she left behind, that he's been living in a pattern of avoidance. He once thought he wanted to be admired. Now he realizes he wants to be seen, truly seen. And the irony is, she saw him, not the polished version, not the proud protector, but the trembling soul behind the armor. She saw the boy who never learned to feel without fear. And that silent recognition, that wordless knowing, is what makes her unforgettable. He called her complicated, but what he really meant was that she couldn't be controlled. He called her cold, but what he really meant was that she didn't play small to soothe his ego. He called her distant, but what he really meant was that she refused to dance with his immaturity. And so, instead of growing, he ran, because facing her meant facing himself. Yet, time has a strange way of stripping away excuses. Pride eventually tires. Distractions lose flavor. And in the quiet of his own reflection, he begins to see it clearly. She wasn't cruel. She was clear. She wasn't detached. She was dignified. She wasn't too much. She was whole. And he realizes how much energy he spent trying to make her smaller instead of making himself deeper. That's when the ache begins. Not the ache of missing her, but the ache of missing the man he could have been beside her. The one who listened instead of reacted. The one who showed up instead of performed. The one who didn't need control to feel safe. That ache is his initiation. Jung said that what we repress in ourselves becomes what controls us. And now, he understands that the woman he once tried to dominate was the very medicine he needed. She didn't come to destroy him. She came to dissolve the false self he mistook for strength. Her presence was never about conquest. It was about awakening. She entered his life like a quiet storm, dismantled the walls he thought protected him, and left him face to face with his own emptiness. That's why she stays in his memory. Not because of nostalgia, but because she represents the threshold between who he was and who he might still become. The paradox of this encounter is that her love was both his breaking and his becoming. He thought she was the challenge, but she was the invitation to step into wholeness, to meet himself without masks. And though he may never say it out loud, deep down, he knows. She was never bad. She was the only one brave enough to love him without feeding his delusion. And that kind of love, though it doesn't always last, always transforms. Even now, her voice lingers, not as words, but as a vibration beneath his skin. Her absence hums with meaning. Every time he remembers the way she looked at him, without flattery, without fear, something inside him shifts. He can't explain it, but he feels it, the echo of truth, the quiet demand to rise. That's the mystery of women like her. They don't stay to fix you. They leave to free you. And once they do, you're never the same. Because their love isn't a comfort, it's a revolution. There exists a strange tension between what a man feels and what he's willing to face. When he stands before a woman who doesn't surrender, something in him trembles, not out of anger, but out of recognition. Her presence stirs an unease he can't name. It's a mixture of desire and resistance, attraction and fear. Jung wrote that the ego becomes desperate when it cannot control what it desires, and that's exactly what happens here. The more he wants her, the more powerless he feels. He's used to seduction as strategy, to winning through charm, to controlling through silence, to conquering through confidence. But none of it works with her. Her stillness disarms him. Her independence mocks his games. And the more he tries to win her, the more he realizes he's never truly known what love is. Because love, in her world, isn't a performance, it's a presence. In the face of that truth, his ego begins to unravel. He's no longer fighting a woman. He's wrestling with himself, with the parts of him that crave validation, control, and superiority. Every time she holds her boundary, it fractures the emotional castle he's built from pride and fear. Each crack forces him to see the man behind the mask, the one who never learned how to be vulnerable without feeling weak. And though he tries to pretend he doesn't care, he feels it, the slow dismantling of his illusions. He'll call her complicated to save face, but the truth is simpler and harder. She sees him. She sees the rage that hides his fear, the detachment that hides his longing, the arrogance that hides his pain. And that kind of seeing terrifies him, because for the first time, he's not admired or adored. He's understood. And being understood without control feels like being undressed in front of truth itself. That's why he leaves. Not because she's too much, but because he can't bear what she reflects. He'd rather be with someone who lets him stay asleep, who mistakes his walls for strength, who doesn't require him to feel. But even as he walks away, her energy lingers, not as comfort, but as conscience. Because once you've been seen at that depth, you can't unsee yourself. Her silence becomes unbearable. There are no arguments, no scenes, no pleas, only absence. And in that absence, he finally starts to hear the noise of his own emptiness. Jung said the unconscious speaks through symbols, and her absence becomes exactly that, a symbol. She isn't just gone, she's become the voice of what he's ignored. He replays their last moments like a confession he never gave. The way she looked at him without judgment, the calm in her goodbye, the way she didn't try to explain herself, all of it returns in waves. At first, he tells himself stories. She was cold. She was distant. She didn't care. But somewhere deep down, a quieter truth begins to whisper. She didn't leave because she stopped loving him. She left because he refused to love her in truth. What she wanted was never impossible. It was presence. It was honesty. It was a love that didn't need to control or prove itself. And now, in her absence, he understands that she wasn't asking too much. He was giving too little. This realization doesn't come with peace. It comes with pain, a hollow ache that no distraction can numb. Because what hurts isn't losing her. It's seeing himself clearly for the first time. He thought he was the protector, the strong one, the man in control. But now he sees how fragile that version of himself really was. He wasn't strong. He was scared. He wasn't dominant. He was defensive. He wasn't confident. He was hiding. And in that seeing, something begins to shift. The ego, stripped of excuses, starts to crack open. Pride dissolves into shame. Shame melts into reflection. And from that reflection, the faint light of awareness begins to emerge. Jung said, self-knowledge begins when we stop projecting and start owning. And now he begins to own it all. The fear, the arrogance, the longing, the pain. He begins to understand. She wasn't bad. She was fair. She wasn't cold. She was clear. She wasn't difficult. She was real. And a real woman, one who knows her worth and stands by it, will always terrify a man who hasn't yet met his own soul. It's in this moment, this quiet confrontation with truth, that transformation begins. The man who once sought control now seeks understanding. The one who once played to win now listens to learn. The one who once performed strength now begins to discover what real strength feels like. Vulnerability without fear. He starts to realize that the love she offered wasn't meant to make him comfortable. It was meant to make him conscious. And consciousness always comes at a cost. The cost is pride. The cost is illusion. The cost is the false self. He begins to see that losing her wasn't punishment. It was initiation. She wasn't the storm that ruined him. She was the wind that cleared the debris. Her departure wasn't rejection. It was redirection, a call to evolve. And now he understands that she wasn't the end of love, but the threshold of it. True love, he finally sees, isn't about possession. It's about revelation. It's not about keeping someone beside you. It's about being someone worthy to stand beside. She didn't want a hero. She wanted a human. A man with an open heart, not a closed fist. And maybe it's too late for her. Maybe she's already gone, already healed, already walking in the light of her wholeness. But even if she never returns, she's already done her work. She's awakened something he can't unlearn. Every woman who followed will unknowingly thank her, because she was the one who broke the cycle, the one who made him see that love without consciousness is just control, disguised as affection. And for the first time in his life, he doesn't want to control. He wants to feel. That's the quiet miracle she left behind. Not her body, not her attention, but her reflection. And it's through that reflection that he finally begins to meet himself. Every transformation begins with loss, and every loss worth remembering begins with truth. When he lost her, he didn't just lose a woman. He lost the illusion that kept him blind to himself. Jung said that what we reject most fiercely in ourselves ends up ruling us from the shadows, and now he understands. What he fought in her was what he had buried in himself. Her courage, her calm, her emotional honesty, all the things he called too much, were the very qualities his own soul had been starving for. It's not her absence that hurts now. It's what she uncovered. That hollow ache inside him is an emptiness. It's space. Space where the false self used to be. And into that space, truth begins to bloom like dawn after a long, dark night. He starts to notice how different the world feels when he stops pretending. How silence doesn't scare him anymore. How honesty doesn't feel like exposure, but liberation. The armor he once wore so proudly now feels heavy, unnecessary. He begins to understand that the strength he admired in her wasn't defiance, it was freedom. The boy who once needed to be right now longs to be real. The man who once sought validation now seeks meaning. The one who hid behind charm now craves depth. It's not weakness. It's awakening. Jung said, "There's no awakening without pain." And he was right. The soul doesn't expand in comfort. It expands in surrender. She was never there to soothe him. She was there to initiate him into truth. He begins to deconstruct himself, piece by piece. He lets go of the masks that once impressed others and starts building something quieter, something honest. He learns that love isn't performance, it's presence. He stops chasing the idea of being desired and starts cultivating the courage to simply be. No pretending, no proving, no playing, just being. And in that stillness, he finally feels strong. Not the kind of strength that dominates, but the kind that endures, the kind that listens, the kind that holds space instead of taking it, The kind of strength that once made her look at him and see potential, the man he could become if he stopped performing and started feeling. This new awareness doesn't come with fireworks or redemption stories. It comes quietly, in small choices, in the way he now listens before speaking, the way he admits when he's wrong, the way he no longer uses silence as a weapon. He's learning to love without fear, to stay without control, to feel without shame. She's no longer beside him, but she's everywhere within him, not as nostalgia, but as guidance. She exists in the way he now respects softness, the way he recognizes strength in gentleness. She's in the way he no longer mistakes emotional availability for weakness. She's in the way he now understands that real intimacy is born from honesty, not performance. He doesn't seek to find her again. He seeks to become what her presence revealed he could be. And that is the paradox of such love. It leaves you, but it leaves you better. She didn't destroy him. She dismantled everything false so that what was true could finally emerge. He knows now that love isn't about fixing or saving another person. It's about seeing them, really seeing them, and choosing to grow beside them. It's about walking through discomfort without running, holding space for another soul without needing to own it. It's about reverence, not possession. He doesn't wait for her forgiveness or her return. He doesn't romanticize what's gone. He simply continues, humbler, deeper, more awake. Because now he understands that her leaving wasn't a tragedy. It was a threshold. She was the initiation he didn't know he needed, the silent revolution that broke him open. There's a moment, long after she's gone, when he catches himself remembering her, not with pain, but with gratitude, because she wasn't the storm that ruined his peace. She was the silence that revealed it, the love that demanded nothing but truth, and in that truth he found himself. Jung once said that some encounters aren't meant to last, they're meant to awaken, and that's what she was, an awakening disguised as love. The kind that hurts before it heals, that destroys before it builds, the kind that demands you to stop running from yourself. Now, when he looks back, he doesn't see the bad woman everyone warned him about. He sees the mirror that showed him who he was and who he could be. He sees that she wasn't cold. She was clarity. She wasn't wild. She was whole. And wholeness, when you've spent your life living in fragments, feels like fire. That's why he'll never forget her. Not because of longing, but because of awareness. She became a mark on his soul, not as a wound, but as a doorway. Through her, he met the truth. Through her, he met himself. And perhaps that's what love is meant to be. Not comfort, not possession, but revelation. A mirror that shows us the parts of ourselves we've buried beneath ego, pride, and fear. The kind of love that demands transformation, not transaction. So now, when he meets someone new, he no longer seeks to be admired. He seeks to be present. He doesn't promise forever. He offers honesty. He doesn't chase attention. He gives attention. Because he's learned that real love doesn't need to conquer. It needs to connect. She was the one who taught him that. Without speeches, without demands, without staying. By leaving, she gave him the only lesson worth learning, that the love which awakens you will never destroy you. It will only strip away everything that isn't real. And in that stripping, you are reborn. Maybe she was never meant to stay. Maybe she was only meant to light the fire and walk away. But in doing so, she did what only rare souls can do. She turned his pain into awareness, his loss into evolution, his desire into depth. She was not the end of love. She was the beginning of consciousness. And now, He finally understands. The woman he once called bad was, in truth, his mirror, and mirrors that reveal us are never forgotten. So if this message touched something deep inside you, that quiet space between pain and truth, don't look away. Sit with it. Because maybe this isn't just a story about him and her. Maybe it's about you. About the parts of you that once called love too much, that once feared your own strength, that once mistook silence for peace. What if the person who broke you open was never meant to stay, but to wake you? What if they were not a punishment, but a mirror, sent to show you the parts of yourself still waiting to be reclaimed? Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." So maybe this isn't fate at all. Maybe this is your moment of consciousness, the point where pain turns into power, where endings become awakenings, and where love finally stops being a battlefield and becomes a mirror of truth. If you felt something while listening, a pull, a memory, a whisper that says, "This is me," let it echo. Don't bury it this time. Write what you felt in the comments below, because when we name our truth, we free someone else to name theirs. And if your soul is craving more depth, more truth, more love, that doesn't just comfort, but transforms, stay with us. Subscribe to Heartsync X. This is where love stops being a game and starts becoming a mirror. Because real love doesn't save you. It awakens you. And once you awaken, you can never go back to sleep.